Thank you so much, everybody, for joining our session today on the topic Accelerating Time to Value in Digital Transformation. Today, we have with us Lee Jellum, who is the Director of Manufacturing Transformation at GE Vernova. And then we also have Lance Burek, who's the Solution Architect here at GE Vernova. Next slide. All right, so before we get started, some housekeeping. Let's make sure we're all muted to avoid any form of distraction. If you have any questions for our speakers, please enter those in the chat. We'll answer all of your questions in the end. If you need any technical assistance, please reach out to me directly via email. And just so you all know, this session will be recorded. And then next slide. Okay, so as some of you may already know, the episode today is part of a series that we have been running since May this year. So if you were interested in any of our previous topics, you can just scan this QR code and then it will give you access to all of our past webinar topics as on-demand versions. And with that, we'll get started on our topic today on accelerating time to value, and I'll pass it to our speaker. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Aroni. So as mentioned, my name's Lance Burek. I'm part of the Solution Architect team here with GE Vernova. And really the topic that we're going to be discussing today is accelerating digital transformation. Now, when we talk about digital transformation, really data is the foundation of digital transformation. And it's very much so a crawl, walk, run scenario. So in those beginning stages, what we're doing is connecting and collecting that data. And then once we get to the more mature stages, that's where we then begin to store, normalize, and manage that data. And then really in our last stage here, the most mature stage is when we can start to predict and optimize on that data. So ultimately, enterprises need data to help make better decisions and to drive better outcomes. Now, how do manufacturing companies digitally transform, and how can we at GE Vernova help our customers? So many of you may be familiar with the ISA 95 model, but here at GE Vernova, we do have an offering at that level 2 layer and at that level 3 layer where we can help our customers collect their data, manage and execute their data, and then ultimately optimize on their data. So we really are a trusted partner throughout that digital transformation journey. Now, before we actually do jump in and talk about the acceleration piece, first we did just want to talk about some current challenges in the digital transformation industry and really just talk about some of the things we're hearing from our customers. So some of the challenges manufacturers currently face can really be broken up into two main categories. The first category here is really along the theme of people. So some of the challenges that we're seeing include an aging workforce. So a large portion of the current working population in manufacturing are nearing retirement. We're also seeing that it's harder to attract new talent. So new grads are less drawn to industries like manufacturing. They're more drawn to industries like technology, like finance. We're also hearing that it's now expensive to train new talent. So due to a lot of the complex and outdated systems at manufacturing facilities, training then becomes extremely difficult, takes more time and more money. Now, on the process and technology side, some of the challenges that we're seeing include implementations that are taking too long. So implementations of digital systems can take a significant amount of time and resources to accomplish if they're not executed on properly. We're also hearing that upgrades are still too challenging to some customers with their existing systems. So upgrades either stop or slow production. And obviously, given today's current digital landscape, that's going to lead to a higher threat of cybersecurity attacks. So cybersecurity is really at the forefront of everyone's current thoughts. And then also what we're hearing is some current on-prem deployments still make it difficult to connect to the cloud and to send that data upwards and outwards. Now, some other current digital challenges, what we're also hearing is really along the lines of disparate systems and technical baggage. So whether this is across an enterprise or maybe a business unit, what we are hearing is that maybe a site 1 has product A, maybe a site 2 has product B, maybe a site 3 has a homegrown system. So now you have sites that are speaking in different languages of data. You can't pick up one engineer from one plant, send him or her to another plant to work with the other product. So it obviously leads to many complications. What we're also hearing and seeing is really just a lack of communication between the IT and OT networks due to architecture. So many of the current on-premises deployments have the ability to collect data on that shop floor that stays on that OT network. So plant engineers can interact with that data, but that data is not bridging the OT IT gap. It's really not sending any data upwards to the enterprise or to the corporation. And so that data becomes extremely siloed at that plant. So those were just some current headwinds that we are seeing within the digital transformation industry, or in terms of manufacturing digital transformation. So now what we want to talk about is really just acceleration, and we've broken this down into three main pillars, with the first being the technology side of things. Now, when we talk about technology, one of the largest changes that we're seeing is the shift to cloud in the industrial space. And I won't spend too much time on these attributes, but really some of the enablement from cloud technology has been an increase in administrator productivity, an increase in staff focus, so the operators and engineers can focus on their jobs on the shop floor, a reduction in total costs, whether that's infrastructure, software, or what we call the total cost of ownership. And then also a decrease in security related incidents, as the cloud is extremely safe and secure. So we at GE Vernova are also accelerating that shift to the cloud. So we do have a SaaS version of our Prophecy Smart Factory offering. Prophecy Smart Factory can also be offered on premises still, as well as in a customer's virtual private cloud. But when you deploy a SaaS offering, that's really where you can accelerate that time to value. So some of the benefits you do get from that SaaS deployment include the reduced risks. So we at GE Vernova are managing that environment, so that risk is being offloaded to us. There's also a reduced upfront cost and initial time in that investment, so it leads to a faster and cheaper time to solution. And then the system itself is also extremely scalable, so you can grow at your own pace. You can start at a line, you can start at a plant, and then you can slowly build out to that business unit or to that enterprise level. So there are lots of benefits in terms of acceleration with the Prophecy Smart Factory SaaS offering. Now, getting away from cloud and really just talking about our technology from an architecture agnostic standpoint, another way that we can accelerate digital transformation with our smart factory software is the pre-configured manufacturing templates, like what we're seeing here. And so this is all out of the box standard technology that really requires minimal implementation work to connect to your process. So this reduces the overall time, resources, and money it takes to actually see value from the software. So it's all about that out of the box approach. Now, on top of that, part of our offering is our rapid application development tool, or what we call Prophecy Operations Hub. And this is really where we have the ability to rapidly create new content. Say, for example, you don't like the way this downtime pre-configured manufacturing template looks. You can take that data from that downtime screen. You can drag and drop your widgets, whether this maybe is a bar chart, maybe this is a table, and then you can quickly deploy that screen in real time. So the rapid application development tool is really a way that we can accelerate closing any gaps. Now, on top of that, we do now offer the Enterprise Cloud Historian. So again, as mentioned earlier previously, what we've seen is an OT network where plant engineers do have access to their data, but that data is not bridging that gap to the IT network. So what we're now able to do is, with a couple clicks of a button, is quickly deploy our Enterprise Historian. So we can now send that data from the shop floor up to the cloud at that enterprise level, where we can also now take in data from other site historians or from third-party historians, and then we can enable our enterprise business analysts to actually take a deeper look into that data. And we can also enable data scientists or use tools from AWS or Microsoft Azure to do the deeper learning of that data. Now, in terms of configuration and administration, we're also accelerating the deployment of our technology with a tool that we call Configuration Hub. So this is a web user interface, single pane of glass, where you can manage all of your deployments, whether that's the MES, whether that's your historian server, whether that's the visualizations that you've created in Ops Hub. So it's that single pane of glass approach so that the administrator's not working with multiple thick clients or multiple tools. It's really a way that we can accelerate that administration and have the operators focus on their jobs at the task. Now, that was the first acceleration pillar on technology. Lee's going to take over now and talk about deployment next.
Thank you, Lance. Hi, my name is Lee Jellum, and I'm going to share the next two pillars for acceleration for faster time to value. So next slide, please. So you learn how to, so the next question is, how do you build your MES standard globally? So we showed some of the, Lance just showed some of the out-of-the-box features that can be deployed. So really now you have to look at the expertise of getting that templated and installed at a site or at multiple sites. So that's really the next step. So here at GE Vernova, we have a team of folks that have done that for many years, and we have a large partner ecosystem of system integrators, and some of them are on this call today, that have that knowledge and experience and expertise to help you simplify the rollouts, faster time to deployment, and reduce costs, as well as easier to maintain. And it all circles around that out-of-the-box capability. But if we go to the next slide, we really talk about that MES global standard, and how do you build that to be more efficient, to accelerate your time to value, because deploying MES use cases can be time consuming. So you really want to look at laying that out, how you build a template, how you deploy that, and more importantly, how do you maintain that? So in this second pillar, deployment is key. And go back one slide.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And so really there's a hybrid methodology that we look at within GE Vernova, and I know our partners have similar or tweaked methodologies to help deploy an MES solution. So that deployment, hybrid deployment, in our standpoint is really looking at, you've always done waterfall for decades, right? So you have your plan, you kick it off, you have your go live and your solution training. But more recently, a lot of folks have found a lot of value from an agile approach. So wrapping an agile discipline to an overall project can have great benefits to accelerating that timeline. So that's one thing that we've been doing, and I know our partners have been doing it as well. So that is something that's key to acceleration. So the next slide, we'll see basically how we do that then is looking at that, building that template, deploying it, testing it, and then fine-tuning it for the next site, and cycling through that 4-step process: design, build, test, deploy, for each of the use cases and or each of the sites. If you can get it granular enough down to the use case, that's even better. What you will find is, of course, that's going to take more project management, program management. So PMO is extremely important here. Somebody's probably clapping from the PMO side. But anyway, that's the key acceleration there for deployment. So after you deploy, your third pillar is adoption. So let's go to the next slide, Lance. So adoption is typically thought of as post go live. So we're starting way off on the right hand side. We're talking about adoption, enablement, and realization of value is really what you're after. So if you move adoption, planning, and strategy prior to go live, you're going to get great benefits as well. So this timeline, I'm sure you might want to screenshot this if you don't already have this, but if you start way back with the value assessment and looking at the value mapping and what you're trying to achieve, and then on the far right you have your value realization. A lot of the steps along the way are common, you're familiar with. And adoption, everyone knows it's important, but how to implement the adoption. And I guess my message is going to be earlier is always better, and building that out, including people into the planning and strategy will also help adoption. It's not necessarily the adoption itself, but it's going to definitely help. So that is key to adoption. So close cooperation with a customer success manager is also key. Here we have part of our acceleration plan, which is on the next slide. We'll talk about customer success, but these are the folks that help you with that adoption, building that plan, building KPIs for the value, tracking those KPIs. So GE Vernova is in it to help you succeed, as well as the services and support side will help you succeed. So they're really looking at, so let's go to the next slide. The services side is really looking at, how do you build it and how do you get value out of it? But along the way, you're going to run into, barriers, and that's where, technical support and maintenance is involved. You're going to run into folks that need education. They want to learn about the software and they want to learn more how they can take advantage of the technology to make better decisions. So education services helps with that. And there's really two pieces there. One is the education services that are standard, that are offered as the software type training and administration and maintenance. But then also what gets deployed. Your deployment methodology must include a, train the trainer or even train the individuals. And that's part of that adoption. And then finally, the value services. All tied into enablement to ensure that value is achieved. So let's go to the next slide. I want to wrap it up. The three pillars then are technology, deployment, and adoption. And these three pillars are going to help you with the acceleration. And if you just summarize those with some key takeaways, as Lance shared, that single source of truth for the data, visibility tracking your KPIs, that enterprise performance, whether it's a single site or multiple sites. Cloud-based analytics and cloud-based solutions are definitely going to accelerate that and allowing you to focus on your operations and governance of your IT. And best in practice, those best in practice standard templates. You saw a couple screenshots. Love to share more about those. Basically, over the years and decades that we've had software out there, there's best in practice templates can really help you accelerate your time to improvement. So let's go to the next slide. So to wrap that all together into a single diagram, we talked about some of the challenges you have on the outside, the supply chain optimization, workforce transformation, cloud computing. Really boils down to that smart factory, which you saw shrink into the middle of the screen, and connecting to your L1 systems, your level 1 systems that we showed, your level 4 systems for ERP. So now you can have an order go down into planning, then release it to production, releases it to the plant floor. All the while, you saw it build out with the personas, and those personas have their view of the world and what's important to them. Pushing those best practice manufacturing templates to those individuals is definitely going to make things simplified for site to site, use case to use case, and have them focus. And now they don't have to hunt for the data; it will be available in their filtered, sorted environment. So that's some of the key. And then finally, at the bottom, the values that you're ultimately trying to drive. So all of that tied together is summarized with the reducing the risk for your digital transformation journey, and when you're looking at technology partners, whether it's software services or adoption, some of the key things you're looking for is, security, secure by design, lower total cost of ownership, persona-based visualization, a highly available and scalable architecture with a global partner ecosystem that has the experience and expertise to deploy your solutions. So with that, I would like to open it up for questions. Feel free to click on the chat button in the top part and we'll answer that. And also we have a little scan me there if after the webinar is over, you still have additional questions, you can submit them here and we will get responses back to you. So Lance, do we have questions? It looks like there's a few here.
Let's see, I'm opening up the chat. No questions, but yes, we could definitely provide this deck to the group after. We can send that out. We'll definitely arrange that.
Excellent.
Any questions? If not, I think we can wrap up. Aroni, I don't know if you want to just give a final goodbye here. Oh, we do have a question here. Yeah, so for mobile apps, so what I talked about with Operations Hub, let me go back to one quick slide here. So the pre-configured manufacturer templates that we did go over, those are built for tablets or iPads. And then what we can do is utilize Operations Hub to create smaller screens with the MES data or Historian data for mobile apps as well. So all are possible, and that's all really being driven by the web-based user administrator. Looks like there's a question on see FedRAMP. So cloud certifications. So I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I know we do have a list of certifications. I would have to go back to our product team and double check on that, but we can definitely get an answer to that, Mike.
This could be related to aerospace and defense, Lance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can definitely double check on that. Right. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you everyone for hopping on. And like we mentioned, we'll send out these slides.
Lance on the chat.
Oh, gotcha. Yep. So it depends on the deployment approach. So when it's a SaaS deployment, that is GE hosted in the AWS infrastructure. But if it's a virtual private cloud hosting, meaning you have your own instance of Azure or maybe Google, then it is agnostic. All right. Thank you, everyone, for hopping on today.
Right. Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Lance and Lee. And just so you all know, everyone will get the recording as well as the slide deck as a follow-up to this webinar. So thank you again for your participation.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.